Welcome to the Performance Enhancing Podcast. It's like steroids for your brain. A podcast for people looking to live life at their peak potential. Chock full of real-world tools and knowledge that you can apply in your life today. By providing you with a lens into the lives, beliefs, practices, and actions of those who are already living extraordinary lives, the Performance Enhancing Podcast will help you shift your mindset or create that change in your daily rituals and habits so you can explode with success in the areas of life that are most important to you. So get ready for another dose of Performance Enhancing Podcast with SatoriPrime. Here's your host, Ilan Ferdman.
Hello everyone. Welcome back to another Performance Enhancing Podcast, Pep Talk, with your host, Ilan Ferdman. I am super psyched about today's episode. I have not had someone that I've hunted down in quite some time like I hunted down Jim Benson. He is the author of a book called Personal Kanban, and it's a book that's changed the way I perceive productivity. In fact, he's the anti-activity guy. He is the effectiveness guy. And just to give you a brief distinction, productivity is how to get a lot more shit done. But we all know that 20% of the work that you do creates 80% of the results. Well, how do you actually focus on just the 20% and do the quality work that makes the biggest difference? And this book, I've shared it with so many people, is just changing people's lives. So in this conversation, we're going to look at how you can implement personal Kanban in your life, what the strategy is, how he came about it, all of that good stuff. I was so excited to work with Jim on this, and we're hopefully doing some projects in the near future. So hope you enjoy this as much as I do. This is part one of my interview with Jim Benson, the author of Personal Kanban. All right, everyone, welcome back. I'm super excited. I may become like a little bit giddy today. I read a book by someone's recommendation a little while ago that completely changed my life. Since then, you've probably heard me talk about it on previous podcasts, but I actually have the author of Personal Kanban, Jim Benson, with us here today. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So, okay, I've already fanboyed Jim the first time we spoke, and before we go into, I have a huge amount of notes and quotes and things that I just want to kind of ask to take the conversation further. But before I do that, why don't you just tell people a little bit about how this book came about, a little bit of your history and what you're passionate about delivering to the world?
Okay. Well, so when people ask me, how do you get to do what you do? I say, what did you study to do what you did? And it's like, you can't study your way into this. This is consulting, especially the stuff that we do, is something you kind of fall into. And so my original background was in psychology, and I kind of love knowing how people think and, helping people when they're in trouble. And I almost graduated with a degree in that, but as I was about to, I realized that if I did, the people that I was studying with would be my peers, and I'd have to deal with them forever. And so I was like, whoa, these people are kind of crazy. So I went into urban planning. I got a degree in urban planning.
Wow.
And applied those ideas of psychology, of how we can live well and work well and be, good, self-actualized, awesome human beings, to the built environment. So how could we build the best cities, neighborhoods, transportation systems, and so forth possible so that, people could live well? And so I did exactly that. I built light rail systems and did transportation work all across the United States, Canada, Israel, Europe, Asia. I did that for about 15 years. Built giant projects, so $1 billion, $9 billion, $10 billion, $100 billion, hugely expensive projects. And at one point during that, my business partner and I accidentally developed some software. And so we started a software company for government, so the government would be both more collaborative and better stewards of their data. And that was kind of our mission statement. We were rather successful at that, and it was a lot of fun. During that period, we realized that the coders that were working for us, we had large, distributed teams, we realized that they actually didn't know what they were doing.
So from a standpoint of skill set or from a standpoint of managing their own time and project?
Well, that's exactly it. So they knew what they were doing as professionals, but they were, you'd say to them, what are you working on? And they'd say, I'm working on this thing. And then as a manager, you'd be like, oh, cool. And then you'd walk away. And then you come back a week later and say, what are you working on? And they'd say, I'm working on that thing. Say, well, why is it taking you so long? Well, because of these other things. Do you think you're working on them too? Well, I guess so. Well, how many of those other things are there? Oh, well, there's this and this and this and this and that thing and these, and I'm helping her with that. And I had this phone call and blah, blah, blah. And soon they've listed, 20, 30 things. And so we said, well, what if we just kind of put up a board that showed you what you were doing? The first board that we put up was actually a mind map. And it was, by personal Kanban standards, it was awful. But just the level of clarity that people got just out of putting up a mind map that said things like Alan, and then had like the 12 things that Alan was working on, and then like the important one highlighted, just that changed the way that we worked. And it refined and it refined. We learned some stuff. We learned a lot from lean manufacturing. And we borrowed the concept of the Kanban and came up with the current form as it is now. So that's the long and somewhat interesting history of that. It actually, there's a lot of stories in there, but
I'm sure we're going to get to a lot of these stories. So just so people know a little bit of background about what I was looking for, I had actually read a book around Scrum and lean management, which was a brilliant concept. The problem was that, as you and I spoke, it ended up being much more for manufacturing and kind of larger software projects and things like that. And what I was looking for was how to take that and map it into my own life. And I couldn't find anything. I was actually interviewing people who were lean managers and certified and all that stuff, was thinking about taking seminars and all that stuff. And then this one girl, Colleen, basically said to me, hey, you should really check out this book by Jim Benson. It's called Personal Kanban. I think it's what you're looking for. So I opened it up, and I just want to read this quote to you guys, because this is how I knew this was going to be the book I was looking for. To-do lists, spawns of the devil. Like, I'm into it. The quote goes, to-do list, the last bastion for the organizationally damned. They're the embodiment of evil. They possess us and torment us, controlling what we do, highlighting what we haven't. They make us feel inadequate and dismiss our achievements as if they were waste. These insomnia-producing, check-boxing Beelzebubs have intimidated us for too long. I remember reading that going, this is going to be really good. Because everything that I'd read, I mean, there's I don't know the exact number, but I'm going to assume a multi-billion-dollar productivity world out there, productivity seminars and how to be more productive and blah, blah, blah. And they all kind of fall back into this, create a vision, create to-do lists, focus on this, focus on that. And right away you're like, boof, we are going to do none of that.
Right.
So talk a little about what's the difference, so people kind of get a high-level view, then we'll go into the nitty-gritty. But what's the ultimate difference between what you are showing people to do and what kind of productivity and what normal, everyone else is teaching?
Well, so we have a history, and this is basically how the human brain works. We're looking for clarity. And there isn't a lot of clarity in our lives. If you have kids or have a job or exist at all, you know that there's a lot of unknowns out there. And so we try and overcompensate by creating senses of false certainty. And that false certainty comes from things like business plans or project plans, from to-do lists, things like that. And these end up being objects that we set up ourselves to limit our own freedoms, basically, and control us. And The nice thing about that is that for a limited time, it calms us down. But those systems that we set up are always flawed. They never tell you what you really need to do. And you usually set up those lists based on what you wish you could get done or feel like you're obligated to do.
Yep.
So the to-do list itself turns into a little mini tyrant that says you must do these things. These are the things for you to do. And this sounds like a semantic argument, but what we found is that in the Kanban, when we set it up and we specifically say you don't have things to do, but you have options, and you can select any one of these options. You can select who you do them with, when you do them, how you do them. There are costs and benefits for starting them, but you need to understand what those are so that you can make the best use of your time. Because if you don't, then strangely enough, you're not making the best use of your time.
Yeah. There's also something to be said, and my wife is super, super organized, but there's something to be said when you have that list of just, things to do, and then someone will inevitably, every single day add something to that list, and then all of this other work just gets kind of pushed down, and it doesn't matter what you've done that day. At the end of the day, you go to bed feeling unaccomplished.
Totally.
And you stay up at night because your to-do list is just spinning in your head. You wake up the next morning, your to-do list is the first thing that goes through your mind, and you start your day basically going, holy shit, I don't have enough time to do what I need to do. So even before you picked up anything to do, you're already like in a state of just, which is a horrible way to be effective. So that's kind of what I want to transition to. The next thing that you guys said, which was like really just blew my mind, was the whole difference between productivity and effectiveness. And I think this is the distinction I really want to make here, that what Jim is going to be talking to you guys about today is not productivity training. It's really effectiveness training. And I have the definitions that you wrote here in the book, which is productivity is you get a lot of work done, but most of the time it's not the right work. Efficiency is your work is easily done, but is it focused for maximum effect? And effectiveness is you get the right work done at the right time. And that's what you guys focus on. So tell people more about how we transition from just being productive and getting a lot of shit done versus being effective and actually getting the right work done.
Right. So in the software world of Kanban, a gentleman named David Anderson, his tagline is stop starting and start finishing. We are ridiculously gifted at starting things.
Especially when you're Geminis.
and we utterly suck at finishing things. But we personally get reward. Serotonin, dopamine, our brains like to finish stuff. When we finish things, we feel like we've accomplished something, but there's this nasty thing that we do to ourselves, which is that when our to-do lists are super long and we are focused just on the to-do list, and let's say, for example, that we are using a to-do list, so you finish something, then you cross it out, and then you've like killed it, it's dead, and you're moving on to the next thing. You don't get to go back and say, hey, I did that. And that ends up being really important for so many reasons that if I started to list them all, we would totally run out of time today. But the Kanban itself is showing you not just what your to-do list is and noting what you have destroyed from that to-do list, but it's saying, what do you have to do? And then it shows you what you're doing, which is important so that you don't start doing too many things. Because if you do too many things, you don't finish them. And the ones you do finish, you finish in a less than desirable way. And then the last section of it is the done area, which ends up being incredibly important for being effective. Because then at the end of the day or the end of the week, you can go back and say, hey, look, I did things. I was pleased with what I did or I wasn't, and you recognize the things that you did. The reason that when we make estimates and plans is because we're always estimating based on what we wish the project would do, not what it actually does. We don't take into account interruptions. We don't take into account all sorts of things. So
when we're talking about personal Kanban, what are the main principles and ideas behind it that make it vastly different than the way that most people are taught to do work?
Right. So there's a couple of initial key tenets. There are only 2 rules for personal Kanban. And the reason that there's only 2 rules is because simple systems are more applicable to more things. So the more complicated something is, the more specialized it is. But also the more complicated something is, the more we sit there and try and figure out ways to work around it.
Yeah.
So complicated systems are called bureaucracies. Yeah, no system is called just screwing around. So if you want to get somewhere between just screwing around and actually and bureaucracy, you want just a few rules. So the 2 rules of personal Kanban are to visualize your work because we can better manage what we can see, and to limit your work in progress because you can't do more work than you can handle. You can't multitask, sorry. You can't context switch constantly because your brain will break down very quickly. You can't keep promising people things and then not delivering them and blaming other people for those broken promises. So the goals of personal Kanban overall are to visualize what we're doing, what we could be doing, and what we have done, and then learn as we go along what is our best way of working. What tasks do we best do in the morning or the afternoon? When is it a good time to reach these people? This is an incredibly important task, but if I start it, the people that I'll be working with are all on vacation. So I'll get to the middle of it and I'll have to stop and wait for them to come back. Don't start it yet. So as you mentioned, do the right task at the right times. And you can't do that unless you're able to actually see it.
So first visualizing your work, which I'm sure people have in some essence done that, at least people that are somewhat productive.
Mm-hmm.
The second piece, the limit your work part.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a rule. I accomplish 3 things in a day. That's it. It could take me 2 hours. It could take me 10 hours.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, that's the game. I don't add more things. I focus on those 3 things. I found out even before having read your book that that's how I go to bed feeling accomplished. And my thinking is that if, say, I was to work, 250 days, this year, and every one of those days I've done 3 things to move my life and business forward. That's 750 things that I've done and completed to move my business and life forward. I think that that's going to be a hell of a year, personally, right? So, and I'm clear, I guess, like unlike most people, that I suck at multitasking. I mean, I'm just the worst at multitasking.
Yeah.
Where other people believe they're really good at multitasking, but talk more about the importance of limiting your work. I know you guys did a ton of research, brain science. I mean, there's some effect that I can't even pronounce. Zygernick. The Z effect, I called it.
So there's again, this is a super rich field, and so we never have stopped studying it because we and scientists that are well funded are learning more and more about this every day. At one point, Stanford took a bunch of people and said, are you an expert multitasker? And they said, yes. And they said, great, come on into Stanford. We're gonna humiliate you.
We're gonna see how smart you really are.
And so they say, we got a bunch of people that said, no, I focus on one task at a time. And another bunch of people said, I do multitasking really well. the people who habitually focused on one task every time functioned better in multitasking environments than the expert multitaskers did. And the reason is because they knew how to focus. So now there's an important thing here. That multitasking, for the definition that we'll use today here, multitasking is I, as Jim Benson, choose to do 7 things at once. Okay. It may be imposed, but more or less it's a willful act to take on too much work. Context switching is a different thing. So context switching is I am working in one context and I'm thinking about something, and now I have to switch and work in this context. And that can come up because I'm multitasking, and it will come up because I'm multitasking. But as we all know, it also comes up because our phone rings, because Facebook pings, because something happens that pulls us out of the state that we're in and puts us in a different state. Those two things added together basically make us productive and effective about 8% of the day.
Wow.
Yeah, it is a ridiculously low number.
Wow.
And so when we go in and work with companies and there's an improvement, they're always like, "Oh my God, this is amazing. We've, doubled our throughput." It's like, "Yes, congratulations. You've moved all the way up to 16%."
You're a well below average human being. Congratulations.
Right. So then there's this other nasty bit, because then people are like, "Okay, well, I'm going to not let people interrupt me anymore." It's like, okay, well then why bother working at a company? Right? So we work at companies to be with other people. So the trick isn't to say, "Don't bug me." The trick is to say, "I understand how my work works. I know what interruptions are because I am part of the system of this company, and people are coming to me for valuable information. And if I don't give it to them, the company will die." Or am I just actually wasting my time? And how much wasting time is natural and normal? Because what we don't want to do is get into kind of a productivity focused. You will be completely effective 98% of the day, because you will die.
Say more. What do you mean by that?
Well, so if for 8 hours a day, you are just constantly using your brain to make awesome stuff for the whole 8 hours every day, it's pretty much like going and doing super extensive cardio 8 hours every single day.
Gotcha. You're like a burnout.
Yeah, you'll burn out in no time at all. And not only that, but you will actually hate everything. So, we do need the getting up and moving around. Things that we feel like are wasteful are things that we're actually doing to repair the structure of our brain, to process what we're thinking about, and to pull us out of the stressful situation of creation and put ourselves more into a, more relaxed state, so that our brains are like, okay. And then you hit it again. What I've been doing recently is we use a tool. It's called a Pomodoro, which is you work for 25 minutes, and then you take a 5-minute break, and then you work for 25 minutes, and you take a 5-minute break, and you actually have a timer that goes ding that lets you know, because you won't know. So I didn't set a timer the other day. I've been doing this for months. I didn't set a timer the other day, and I worked for 3 hours, and I didn't even notice. Because we get into what we're doing, and the Pomodoro breaks start to feel like an interruption. But I can go now. I can do a very, very productive, very, very effective work day that is now also very efficient, because those little breaks that I take, where I get up and I take a short walk, that gets my blood pumping, it calms me down, it lets my brain process a little bit, and then when I come back, I'm going to do an even better job that next 25-minute round than before.
Do you work on the same task during different Pomodoros, or are you switching tasks from, say, say you were writing for 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break. Do you come back and answer emails, or do you continue your writing?
Well, I will try and continue. I will try and do the task that I'm on until it's done.
Got it.
In personal Kanban, the work in process limits that we set for people are generally, 3 to 5. And that's because we live in a real world. So we recognize that you can't finish everything all the time. So sometimes I'm working on this writing project, and now I have to get up and go to this meeting, or I have to deliver this webinar, I have to do this other thing. So these other tasks will definitely work their way into your day. But the goal is that during that 25 minutes, you're focused on the thing that you're working on. If you finish it, you can move on to the next task, but you kind of draw a little bubble around yourself and you say, don't bug me during these 25 minutes. In an office setting, when I'm not working at home or when I'm with clients or whatever, one of our clients, in fact, has set up a Pomodoro room. And so you're like, okay, I need to go focus. And their rule is you can't do more than 2 Pomodoros in a row because you are part of the company.
Interesting.
Yeah. So if you are another person, if you're a person and somebody needs you, they can go to the Pomodoro room and they look in, and each of the desks has a timer on it. And they're just like, oh, cool. I can go chat with Alon in, 20 minutes. I can totally wait minutes. But if you don't have that timer, then people are like, when am I going to talk to him? Oh my God.
And that derails their day.
Visual control that says, everything's okay. Calm down. But this is how the system's working.
Brilliant. So now let's talk a little bit about the functionality. So we know it's visualize your work, limit your work. You were talking about work in progress, limited to 3 to 5, things like that. But can we kind of take it a step further and just show people maybe what this looks like or what the structure of this would be?
Sure. Let me do this. Let me very quickly, if the world will let me do this. There we go. Sorry about the big fingers.
Jim has unusually large fingers. No, I'm just kidding.
The placement of the camera on this is unfortunate. It's like weird. All right, so I'm going to share my screen, and there we go. So there are many products out there right now that will allow you to do a personal Kanban online. There's Kanbanery, there's Kanban Flow, there's Lean Kit. This one is Trello, and I'm using Trello simply because it's the easiest one to set something up in, and I'll show you why it's maybe not the best one in a minute. But so what we would do here is we would have options and doing with the whip limit, and
WIP, by the way, guys, is work in progress.
Indeed it is. All right. So now we have three columns here. And in those columns, in our options, we're going to put everything that we could be doing right now. All of the stuff that would be in that to-do list on a grand scale will go into that options column.
So things like write a book, hire a virtual assistant.
Yeah. We'll use those. So one of the problems with write a book, and I can say that because we actually did this, is that write a book is too big. So
that's why I wanted to use that one.
Yep. So if you pull in, that might be better. If you pull in write a book is going to sit there for months and months and months. And the goal here is, let's say that our cards are more like research workflow. And so we're going to do some research for workflow, and that's a task that will actually flow into done. And what we're trying to do here is build a system where we're watching work flow from column to column. And as that work flows, you learn about how you finish your work, what work you like to finish, and what things trip you up, and better ways to work. So it's every time it's, do this thing with Jeff. Okay, Jess, good enough. So we move that in, and it sits there for a week. And then the next time I have something to do with Jess, it sits there for a week. And the next time I do something with Jess, it sits there for a week. I learned that I've got some issue with working with Jess that's making these tickets not flow. Is it because Jess is unavailable? Is it because Jess is annoying? I don't know what it is at the moment, but now I can take a look at that and I can say, okay, hey, I need to do something about that. What we want to do here is we see that we have a WIP limit of 3. We'll just go ahead and use the tickets we already have. There, 3. Okay, we're all products likely in one way or another, even globally, of Sesame Street. We all have perfectly wonderful, active Sesame Street brains. We all know that 3 is 3 and 4 is greater than 3. Okay? So even though this system is really simple, what's happened now is we've created a system where our brains are going to say, I don't feel comfortable breaking this rule, right? And the reason for this, as Alon mentioned, was this. We have in our brain something that's called the Zeigarnik effect. And the Zeigarnik effect says that when we start a task, we don't stop thinking about it. So if I end up having 15, 16 things that I'm doing at a time, which most people who are listening to this probably do,
yep,
then we're constantly thinking about all that stuff. So it's like if you're standing there and your spouse says, can you hold this? And you say yes. And then they say this, and you say yes. And then they say this and this and this and this and this. And soon you're that quintessential guy in the department store at Christmas where he's holding, the box.
Boxes on his head.
And we have reduced our capacity to focus on the thing that we're working on because we're thinking constantly about all the things that we're actually putting aside right now. And we're not just remembering that they exist, because all of these things, we never do things for ourselves. We always have a customer. We always have somebody that we're doing something for. Yeah. So we have to think about them and what they want and when they want it and what will please them and what won't and who we're working with and how much it will cost and what our penalties will be for not completing it. There's a lot of stuff that goes into each of these tickets, right? So don't do that. The screen share thing happens to be right on top of my other tickets. So I'm gonna have to nuke some tabs in order to get to my other. Okay, so this is a little bit bigger, but this is right now. I'll make this a little smaller. We have an online school, and this is the Kanban for our online school. So in this case, the doing column is all of this stuff, right? It's called a value stream. So when we do any segment for the school, it flows through pre-production and filming and post-production and review and putting it on the site and so forth. And so each one of these units that we're doing, has to be written, has to be filmed, has to do this, has to do that. And what happens now is that since John and Tony Ann and the other people at our company and I all share this board, we know exactly where all of our work is at any time. So now as a group, we have the personal board that we just looked at, but now we also have this shared board that allows us as a group of people to work together and to not have to have status meetings, not have to talk about the state that things are in, because it's all here in the board. And if we go into some of these tickets, let's find one with some notes. There's where the files are and what state things are in, and so forth. For our personal work at Modus Cooperandi at our company, we use this board. There it is. I'll again make this a little bit smaller just to show the state of it. Now this looks pretty messy to most people because we're used to the board.
Yeah.
And other people aren't. But our doing column is right here. You can see that our little heads are on there. So we know that we're, as individuals, we're not going to pull in more than 3 tasks at a time. These are my 2 tasks. Right now I'm shooting a video and I'm getting tickets to speak in Nashville next week. Tony Ann is working on these 3 videos, doing research and so forth. And John has actually gone on vacation, so he's not working on anything. So lucky him. That's the form. The form is that we have tickets. We generally have a stuff you haven't done yet, stuff you're working on, and stuff that's complete column. As you move up in, proficiency, your boards can become, as you can see, more and more complicated. But that initial options doing done board is where we always start everybody. And to be very clear, it's usually done with, this may be the only time in my life I'm not directly attached to a Post-it note. We always, in fact, just to drive the point home here, you saw that we had the digital boards, but what we can also see here is that I actually do have a board on the wall here.
I love it. That's literally on your door.
It's literally right there on the door. Yes.
That's amazing. That's the no excuse policy. That's the, everyone's like, well, I'm going to have to go out and get a whiteboard and this and that. You're like, no, just stick it on your wall.
Yeah. I mean, I live almost entirely in hotels. There aren't a lot of whiteboards in my hotel rooms, but what there is there's always stuff that needs to be done. And one of the things about having it there is that it's real, it's tactile, and you can't shut it off.
Yeah.
So one of the most important things about a Kanban is that it's always on and it's always staring at you and saying, this is what's going on. And the moment that you can minimize it is the moment that you can easily ignore it. It's out of sight, out of mind. So I always have that personal physical board right there so that I can get my stuff done.
All right, well, we'll leave it there. Hopefully you guys are able to watch this on YouTube. I know some of you guys listen in the car on your phones, but I highly recommend that you actually listen to this on YouTube, just because he actually screen shares his workflow and what that looks like. And I don't know, for me, I'm very visual, so it was really, really helpful. Look, my recommendation is this: go grab the book on Amazon. There's no audiobook. I don't think you need an audiobook. I think you want the soft cover in your hands. There's a lot of pictures and examples and things like that I think you get a lot of juice from. And yeah, it just an amazing conversation about what it means. And personal Kanban to me is personal responsibility. It's like, how do you become more effective? How do you become grounded in what it is that you're good at and not good at? How do you deconstruct those limiting things that are holding you back? Well, the only way to do that is to have something like Jim talks about present and in your face at all times. So I can't recommend it enough. Definitely go grab this book. In addition, one last thing, this is part 4 that we just did yesterday. So we are on a kick right now with the Have It All webinar series. It's a 10-part series we're doing every Thursday live at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you want, come hang out with those. If you like these kind of conversations about how to be the best version of yourself, how to have it all in your life, then come be on these webinars with us. They're incredible value. You'll get to see an insight into how Guy and I operate. You get to come out and ask as many questions as you want. And all you have to do is head over to youwillhaveitall.com/webinar, and you can register for the upcoming one. So hope to see you guys on the next call with us. And until then, have an amazing day.